Hello, Foucher. Um, so I've decided I'm going to do a series of videos about folk magic or magic in general, in regards to higher magic or lower magic, i.e., ceremonial magic and folk magic, and how in the past, where did they stand in social statuses and social circles, in regards to the higher class, the working class, and the pauper, the lower class, and how that sort of fits in with the folk. And I always say it is not folk magic unless it's to folk, and it really does. Magic is an everyday practical affair. It goes in with your everyday objects, it goes in with your everyday life, it fits in with everyday life and not out of the bounds. Whereas ceremonial magic is a lot more complex system of using demons or angels and certain spirits and seals that you use. And normally it's a system that is in a specific grimoire. So we'll start from the top to the way to the bottom. I'm Jenny from the block. I used to have a little stop it. But yeah, so we'll talk about magic in the perspective of the higher classes, the rich. So the reason magic is different and they're using more higher magic, ceremonial magic, for two reasons. A, folk magic is to help everyone's everyday means, and it's mostly through desperation and to bring luck, to secure luck, because things can just easily turn around, and especially to the very lower classes, which we'll go into that. And the second reason is that ceremonial magic was, and using grimoires, was seen as a sophisticated way of magic, whereas and it was seen that folk magic was more superstitious to the higher classes, and it was quite a pompous thing as well. Like they would be the only ones that could afford grimoires, like grimoires that you get today. They're quite expensive. Not everyone can afford them unless you have like a reprint of a paperback. But they were very expensive and super rare, and only really the rich could afford them. I think sometimes like getting a grimoire would probably be equivalent of getting like buying a car outright today. That's how grimoires would be so expensive. Or you could go down the cheaper option of purchasing a handwritten one, and then they were just as expensive, just a little bit cheaper. See, as like you want your name brands, and you get your knockoffs, your fakes, sort of the same thing. And and also you've got to think of their mind state. So if you're like a lord, or of nobility, of a rich society, their egos are that they are because they're highest of rank society, therefore they're closer to God, they're more close to the divinity than everyone below them. So it makes sense that they would use work with angels, or work with, or so say, command demons, control demons, to get their desired results. And that's why you see stuff like not so much you see in folk magic, like about money and luck. You see more about using angels to bring forbidden knowledge, hidden knowledge of the universe, about the world beneath our physical world, in the use of angels and communication with angels, like sort of Enochian magic that was created by John Dee, who was the astrologer, conjurer as well, to Elizabeth I. And it's all about getting with the divinity, and as well in the higher classes, philosophy is key. To be a philosopher at this time means that you are educated, intelligent, sophisticated. So if you can obtain means of theology, about how the world works, the universe, divinity, then you are more sophisticated. So we'll go on to the working class. So they are still, some are using ceremonial magic, but again, not print, but more handwritten books, and amongst each other, if you've got a close friend that's got a handwritten one, grimoire, then you every time you come round, you want to bring your notebook around. There's anything you like, you can pick and choose, and so that's where folk ceremonial magic becomes kind of folk ceremonial magic, where people are just bits and patches, and this is why we see so many variations of grimoires where you might look at one grimoire from a different era, especially if it's handwritten ones, and the signs may look a slightly little different. The Latin is not great, because it's been handwritten probably numbers of times from one person to the next, and then so on and so forth. But yes, within the working class, it's again predominantly folk magic, because they're in the world where even though they're working class, they have a skill, they're a tradesman, or woman, well, tradesman at this time, things can still go awry, things can go to shite. So that has to be secured, and witches are always at the foot of it. But what is different is that it's not a hobby like it is for the upper classes. It is a side job. So it was very rare that it would be your full-time job, and set for a different status, which we'll go on next. It will be your side job. It would be your second job, really. You will be a miller, or an innkeeper, or a cobbler or whatnot. And if you are interested, or it's been passed down to you, you're also a cunning man, or a cunning woman, or a wise man. And often this is why you see really different shades of magic, folk magic, because, like I said, folk magic is personal. It adapts with the times and with the people, folk. So often you'll see magic that coincides with their main job. So, for example, witch bottles would probably be the main people for like innkeepers, because when someone back then you could have a dram, but if you could afford, you could buy a bottle. And that would last you the night, depends how you are. And after you get drunk, and these were known as Bartman jugs or Bellarmine jugs, and they really were just containers to contain alcohol, like ale or wine, if you could afford it. And often these drunkards would get on their back, and someone was then able to obtain. Sometimes the in person would like sneakily take it and then reuse it. Sort of like recycling today. So the witch bottle would be probably more to their arts, being an innkeeper. Stuff like the divination rites of the sieve and shears. Well, the shears, the sieve is mostly used by the miller. He's using it to sort the grain, the husk from the grain. The shears for the farmer, for shearing the sheep. So it is an agricultural sign of magic, that divination. And it says 2 shears are placed on the sieve, and people touch their hands, and they say St. Peter, St. Paul, who's the thief, and it determines. So the way it turns, so they'll go, is it so and so? Is it so and so? And if it turned, because the pressure and the friction of the shears holding it in place turned or moved, then that was the person that stole your object. So that would be more of an agricultural kind of folk magic, divinatory, and that's where you go into like stuff that are quite witchy societies, like through the old days of guilds, trade guilds, like the Miller's Word, the Horseman's Word, the Toad Witch, all sorts of kind of like, secret societies among working class folks. And there was often things of like, Christian mythology and a bit of the devil because of folklore. Particularly like blacksmiths are connected with being, witchcraft and the devil, as well as the miller. Because Tubal Cain being the first blacksmith in the Bible. And then it becomes like a side job, and I hear you're at the innkeeper. have a drink. You're like, here you do over, cunning. That's the speaking of, oh, you do, I do. Um, I'm having a problem with this, or oh, I really like this lassie, or is there anything that you can create to make her sleep with me or fall in love with me? And like, well, see me after doors, see me after closing, or when it gets quiet. And it is often either a barter system where if you do this for me, I'll fix your fence. I can see that your door on your inn's been kicked on from the last drunkard. I'm really good at that carpentry. I'll fix your door if you can make her fall in love with me. So a barter system, or a couple of pennies, equivalent to like a tenner. Like we see today, readers charge no more than they shouldn't, no more than £20 a reading for half an hour or an hour, depends on you. So we've gone to folk magic, and this is purely folk magic, and little snippets if you've along the way of sigil work. Is people of the pauper, the people who are the lower class, and although many people today in this common climate, I think we're all verging on lower class at the moment because of the current climate. But back then, if you were the lowest class, you didn't have a home to live. You were homeless. If you're lucky, you could live in some old ruin that no one owns no more. Like the Pendle Witches lived in Malkin Tower. That was probably an old, it is an old medieval watchtower for defence. Or you live in tents, makeshift tents, made of hide and stuff like that, if you were able to attain it. Or you didn't. You just kind of slept with the elements, and you could get shade under trees or whatever you can. So this becomes someone who is poor society. Often if you were from poor society, it was generational. So therefore, you didn't have a trade that was taught onto you. You couldn't have money for apprenticeship to be a tradesperson. You couldn't afford materials to do it off as a kind of off your back thing, which some people did if they weren't apprenticeship and just natural, jack of all trades. So their only source of income or food and stuff really was through fortune telling and cunning craft as a full-time profession. And they often found their charms, the clients, stuff that was found on the roadside, stuff that mainly, that you can get from plants and trees, stuff that is basically for free. And then you can sell it on for a couple of pence, or guineas or whatever. Not guineas, but, a couple of pence. Or, having trade of like cloth, if you're lucky, or, food was probably the main time. It was probably for the working class and the upper class. They would take advantage, and probably just it's cheaper to give them a loaf of bread for a charm, or a reading, a divination. So it was their full-time job, and often that's where you see. Come to the 19th century, of street magicians, and I'm not talking about trickster, like street sorcerers and fortune tellers, and that's where the tent comes from. I still have fond memories of going to the fair and stuff and nagging my dad to give me a couple of money, like a bit of money to get my palm read and whatnot. And that's where it comes out in that tradition. So often it was a simple quiet tent. It was one that was held with a main pole, and then sort of pegged out like a kind of canopy sort of thing, small canopy, and then maybe a suitcase, or if you could, a folding table that you could travel with you. But often probably like a suitcase, really, a wooden suitcase that could, turn, not only contain your stuff, but also turn into like a chair. So you take, on the night time, you'll sleep in the countrysides and the woodlands, away from prying eyes of your laird or your lord, wherever landowners, and then up early in the morning, taking your tent to the streets, where you would entice your customers to come in and have fortunes told, or a wee charm or two. And you can see this in like bed knobs and broomsticks, where the guy, is setting up, and he has like a suitcase that turns into a chair. Or if anyone's watched the fantastic series of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, you see street magicians there, and Mr. Norrell, not my favourite, wants to stamp out street magicians and conjurers and make it respectable. So yeah, and you can see the guy in the main one that's talking about the Raven King, he sleeps in the hedge, he sleeps in the field, anywhere he drops. But he's one, and you would entice people like, come on, which I can tell your fortune, I can tell fortune, I can tell your future, I can give you that odd love charm, blah blah blah. Sort of the market criers. I mean, it's certainly when I go back to Birmingham, it's still like that. The market, come on, get your cheese, 2 for £1, blah 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 blah, or go to the car boot, and that's how they acted. As much as because the way in their eyes, that's their income, their only source of income. So it's their profession. They wouldn't act no less. So yeah, that's the kind of context I just wanted to put into context of magic through the different classes of people, the folk, and how it would be utilized. On the next series, I will be doing examples of how each conjurer or practitioner from different classes of society would have practiced. So watch out for that. This is just the introduction of it, and it's something I wanted to do for a while, and it's going to be really fun. So, and some of it quite messy. But yeah, that's all for now. Over and out. Hope you're all well. Slanchiver.